with people like J.K. Molina and Dakota Robertson. And my editor, Devin. And again, we were there for 6 months and we kind of figured out the location. We got what we needed out of it and we made a ton of progress in business, especially being around those right people. And so after this, I moved back to Scottsdale, Arizona, and we broke our lease in Texas just because we wanted to get out. We wanted to experience something new, and I hadn't lived in Scottsdale before because I always perceived that as like too high above me. It's a pretty nice place to live. And so, funny thing, I'm in this transitional period now. I'm in a temporary spot. I was in Phoenix before, and now I'm going to be moving in a week to a spot where I signed like a 9-month lease. But honestly, I'll probably break it in 6. So we'll see where that goes. And that's the thing that I've noticed is this is where I thrive. This is where I make the most progress. It forces me to publish anything that I've been putting off or act on the ideas that I've had in my mind. If I'm moving somewhere and I know that I need the resources or I know that my bank account is going to fall a bit lower than the standard that I have for myself, then my survival is going to be threatened. I'm going to be put in this state of stress and I'm going to have to work to survive. And if people don't have a way of creating the resources in order to let them do those things, like having a business, like I keep talking about, then it's going to be very hard to progress to a certain point or do what you want to do with your time or achieve that autonomy or freedom that everyone wants. And this is also the time where I'm just super productive. I feel like the flow of information and the idea generation and just my output on the things that I do, they're so focused because I have that singular goal in the back of my mind of wherever I'm moving or whatever I'm doing. There's different strategies to this, but life becomes so much more meaningful because it's easy to filter the signal from noise in the day-to-day situations that you go through simply because you're so dead focused on accomplishing a goal that you're forcing yourself to hit by throwing yourself into the unknown, doing something that you can't back out of, like signing a lease or doing something related to that, and forcing yourself to reach that new level. If life feels meaningless, it's because you aren't training your responsibility muscle. You haven't lifted the emotional weight to add more to the bar and see progress on a deeper level than muscle. So this is all to say that we're here to talk about my concept I call tactical stress, because I've noticed this pattern that we're talking about multiple times in my life and how beneficial it has been to me. I would argue that it is the secret to abnormal results, and it is a very extreme and potentially dangerous strategy. A way to preface this concept is by explaining how a goldfish only grows as large as the tank that it is put in. So if you put it in a small tank, it will only grow to a certain amount. If you put it into a large tank, it will grow to fit that. And this also brings in the concept of Parkinson's law, which states that work expands so as to fill the time available for its completion. So if you give yourself 10 minutes to do a task, it's going to take 10 minutes. If you give yourself a week to do a task, it's going to take a week. But that stresses the importance of deadlines and how to set a true deadline that actually forces you into action, which we'll talk about later. What I call tactical stress is quite similar to both of these. Tactical stress is the conscious decision to force yourself into a do or die situation, knowing that you have the skill to make it work and have no choice but to overcome your fears. The result is a season of intensity that propels you into the next level of your life. When you have an understanding of this concept, you can use it to get out of a rut, right? Because when you identify as being in a rut, or you're like, wow, things are getting very stagnant in my life, and you become aware of that, now you will have a tool to get yourself out of it. Because normally you wouldn't have a tool and you're like, fuck, I'm stuck in this rut, I have no way out, and then eventually like life happens and you eventually get out. but this is a way to force your way out. Let's dig into the philosophy and psychology of tactical stress before we get into the actual strategies. That way you have that big picture understanding. You know why it works, because this is a huge problem with just general how-to advice, is people don't have the depth. They don't have the true understanding of why it works. And so they miss certain things when they actually go to act, or they don't have the mindset or the perspective available to them to note patterns when they are acting, to realize, oh, this was a mistake. Now I need to make a better decision, right? The purpose of tactical stress is to launch yourself into the unknown, or the land of infinite potential. And when you do this, if you launch too far, you become overwhelmed with information. It becomes difficult to metabolize that information, which we talked about in the last video on mental aesthetics or mental bodybuilding, where going about life and perceiving information, which is what we're doing at any given moment, if you push too far into something that you don't know, too far into your, like, out of your comfort zone, then you're exposed to all of this chaotic information that you don't yet know how to order in your mind or actually make use of, or it's just too much and you can't filter it. So like your body not being able to digest food when you eat so much and you feel like shit, it's the same thing with your mind. And so when you do this consciously and you know that you can acquire the skill and education necessary to make this goal work, that's where the magic really happens. Of course, you don't want to throw yourself too far into the unknown. With the example we used earlier, of course, I'm not going to be able to buy like a billion-dollar house and expect myself to reach that point in business. It has to be just above your level. If you're a level 2, then you need to aim for level 4, not level 100. And when you do this, you're forced to create clarity from chaos. It's going to feel a bit chaotic at first. You're going to feel that stress, that tactical stress. So you set a goal that is borderline impossible, force yourself to achieve it, and transmute the stress to study and act your ass off until it becomes reality. Doing this does a few things pertaining to psychology. First, it creates a frame of reference. Your goal has to stay top of mind the entire time that you're doing this. When you launch yourself into the unknown, it has to be out of the pursuit of a goal that is in the unknown. Your goal, or any goal in life, because at any given moment, we are acting towards a goal, whether you're conscious of it or not. Most people are acting towards the unconscious goals that society assigns to them, like going to school, getting a job, retiring at 65, or really anything, just marrying someone that they don't enjoy or like simply because they're supposed to marry someone, or like the stereotypical, like, oh, you become a doctor, but I don't want to become a doctor, but you stay in that job simply because it's expected of you. That's what I mean by you're always pursuing a goal. Even right now, I'm clearly pursuing a goal of making a YouTube video, but unless you're doing absolutely nothing, you're pursuing a goal. So the point of this is to set a goal. That way you have that frame of reference. That way you can filter signal from noise. You can filter the important information. If I set a conscious goal to make $100,000 in business and I act on this tactical stress strategy of moving into a new place, buying something that I can't afford, or another strategy that we talk about later, once I do that and once I'm forced into that mindset, then everything I see is going to be through the lens of how is this going to serve my goal? When I'm scrolling on social media for entertainment, the goal of entertainment, then I'm going to ignore any valuable information that could benefit my future. But if I'm building a business, then I'm going to filter through the memes and bullshit and get to the value that I see. I'm going to like that. And eventually you're going to condition yourself into that state of being and education where I'm going to see an account that's giving something valuable, like this video, for example. I'm going to watch more of their videos. Their algorithm is going to start to feed me more videos. And then eventually character begets action. It's going to shape who you are over time, the information that's circulating in your head and is top of mind, and it will influence your actions. That's the first thing, is that it creates a frame of reference. The second is that it creates a deadline, a true deadline. And everyone knows that deadlines are useful in productivity, but most deadlines aren't real. When you fly across the country or invest your life savings in coaching, the deadline is as real as it gets. You only have so much time to make it work. If you fly across the country to become a digital nomad, then how much time do you have until your bank account hits zero and you become homeless in a country where you don't even know the language? You either make it work or you let it fall apart. And that's the prerequisite here, is if you don't have a track record of being ambitious and taking action on certain things, this strategy isn't for you. Please do not do this, because I know it's going to come back and it's like, oh, Dan told me to fly across the country and waste my entire life savings. and now I'm homeless. So don't do that. But the third thing is that it narrows your focus, because when your mind is narrowed on a goal, this is very similar to the frame of reference where your mind is narrowed on a goal. Let's say like when you're actually working on something, you're focused on writing. Let's say you're writing a newsletter and you know exactly what to do. You have the clarity to act. You have the education, the understanding, the prior resources, and a plan to actually make it work. And especially with a deadline, like me posting a newsletter every Saturday, I need to get that done. And when your mind narrows in, distractions can't really block it because you're so focused on it. So this is another way to end just being a slave to distractions. Now, one thing that we do have to talk about before we go further is removing your money limits. It's safe to say that at a certain point, you will have to start a business or become an entrepreneur to get to where you want to be in life, unless you settle for something less, which of course, there's nothing wrong with if you're actually happy with that, but that's not the audience that I'm talking to here. Like, I know my audience and I know that you guys want more. The only reason I was able to do this time and time again to increase not only my quality of life, but my income so rapidly over 4 years is that I had a business that I had control over in order to make more money. In 4 years at, let's say, a corporate job, maybe you can get like a 5 to 10% boost in salary, if that. I bet that's extremely rare. So let's say you make $100,000 salary. In 4 years, 10%, $110,000 salary. Really? With all of that work, if you actually focus that work towards a business, I don't see why in 4 years you couldn't go from $100,000 a year to $100,000 a month, if not more. In business, all that it takes is a proper strategy, the right skill set, a compelling offer, and enough traffic to sell $100,000 worth of a product. And yes, I'm aware that's an oversimplification, but that doesn't mean it's wrong or not worth listening to. Finally, let's talk about the strategies for tactical stress. Now, this is where things get touchy. So I would encourage you to keep an open mind throughout this, but also these are not the only things you can do to implement this strategy. There's quite a few things, and I encourage you to discover your own, but these are just the ones that have worked for me. So number one is launching a product before actually building it, right? Because this is a huge problem I see with creators, freelancers, really anyone that's trying to launch a product or service, is that they just take forever to build the product and then they never end up launching it and they never end up making money. So instead of actually building the product, build the landing page, build how you're going to sell it, and accept pre-orders for it. Not even pre-orders, but just set a launch date. Let's say I want to set a launch date of January 1st. I start promoting 3 weeks out every week up until then. And once I make the first sale, once I actually make the first sale, then the pressure's on. I have to deliver. I have to build the product before January 1st. And that's an MVP that I can continue to iterate on. You're not going to create the perfect product first time around. That's what a minimum viable product means, is something that you get out and you test and you iterate with customer feedback. So this will obviously require you to have marketing and sales skills so you can actually sell something. But aside from that, I would just recommend watching my one-person business playlist here on YouTube, or enroll in digital economics if you just want all of my systems and everything given to you for actually building, launching, promoting a product, and even before that, building a brand, writing content, literally everything. The second strategy is location hopping, which we've talked about. So to recap, I would pretty much move locations every 6 months or so, if not less, if not more. And once I felt like I just became way too acclimated to the location, I became too comfortable. I wasn't making much progress. My income stagnated, my business stagnated, my ideas stagnated. It was because I wasn't in the both physical and mental. They play into each other a lot. The physical and mental environment that would be conducive to those things. I knew all of the restaurants. I knew most of the people that I'd run into every day. I knew whether or not it was going to benefit my future to actually make friends with certain people. And I go on a lot of walks, so it's not really new anymore. That's a great way to generate ideas, is just walk down a new path. Throw yourself into the unknown. Take a different route to work. There was no further room for discovery for me. This concept also holds true for building a business versus working a job. Is with a job, I think it's good practice to like job hop every 6 months to a year to increase your salary if you can. But you can also get stuck in a job and just get trapped in this robotic, anti-human state of living. But with a business, you can do that too, but you have full control. You can throw yourself out there by launching a product and force your business to grow. You have full control over how far into the unknown you push. The third strategy is investing in education. I used to be a course hoarder. Like really, I would purchase, I think I purchased like 50 software development courses when I was learning programming, and I would just hoard them and I'd watch them and I'd build projects along with them, but I didn't really learn anything. And that's the thing. They helped me build my knowledge and education to an extent, but they never really led to any tangible results, especially in terms of income, which is the main reason we're all really learning things. And after seeing some success with freelance web design, I knew I wanted to go all in on social media. I'll be talking about this in one of the next 2 videos about just like how to actually grow on social media, the things that people don't tell you about it, because I saw the potential to infinitely grow my readership over time. If I could get 1 follower, then I could get 1 million. And if I could get 1 million, then I could get 10 million. And so if I had 10 million or 1 million followers, I was kind of set for life if I had a product that sold. I saw that building an audience with valuable writing that they wanted to read would allow me to build and sell anything I wanted to make a living, as long as the customer wanted it as well. This is the driving force behind why I created 2-Hour Writer. It's because I saw the power of writing and building an infinite readership that would allow me to sell anything according to my interests. That seems like a logical option for people that want more out of life and want to monetize what they enjoy learning about and improving themselves with and improving others with. That's how you make money. So during this time, when I made that decision of I want to go all in on social media, what did I do? I invested $3,500 in a coaching program. So there's always 2 camps here. There's one camp that is like, wow, these people are charging $5,000 to $10,000 for coaching. That's insane. Like, I would never pay for that. And it's because 1, you probably don't have the money. 2, you haven't experienced good education before. 3, you don't see the potential. You don't believe, you don't have the mindset. You don't have the awareness and of opportunity that's available in the online business space. And then there's a second camp, which they enjoy learning. They see the potential. They believe, they know that they can be a part of it. And so they invest, and the purpose of that investment for me, I didn't even, I only showed up to 1 coaching call, and I'm not mad about it. I'm very grateful that I did that. I showed up to 1 coaching call, and the only thing that kicked me into action was wasting that money, $3,500 down the drain. I went to the coaching call. I realized, oh, I already know all of this stuff. Why am I not doing anything about it? And I started doing it. But if I didn't spend that money, I wouldn't have done it. I wouldn't have made that realization. Strategy 4 is material items. So this is a touchy one because it's just common. Like the most common thing, like money doesn't buy happiness. You don't need a fancy car, a fancy watch, a fancy house, all of this stuff. And I mean, that's a half truth. I agree to an extent, but there is utility behind those things as long as they aren't like shallow surface level pursuits where honestly, a lot of the good things in my life came from being what other people would perceive as materialistic. And they taught me about the thing that I purchased, where I purchased a $40,000 watch one time and I went home, got home, put it on and just hated what I saw. I did not like it. I returned it the next day. Thank goodness that they had a return policy. But aside from that, it taught me like, oh, I'm never going to buy a fancy watch again unless it really means something to me or I know the history behind it, or it's something that I truly enjoy, or it's a hobby like watch collecting and like I have so much money that I don't have to worry about it. Like you need to think holistically about an individual situation they're in before you judge them on, oh, like they just bought that car because they're coping, or they just bought that watch because they're trying to impress people. And on that point, there is utility in that, where I drive a fairly nice car. That's the one thing that I allow myself to like splurge on is my car. And if you're wondering, it's a Mercedes GT 63S. It's pretty fast. It sounds good. It's matte black, so it's on brand. But it is a status game, and I'm aware of that. And I feel like if people are aware that they're playing status games, then it helps you not become a slave to those things. But you'd be surprised in how many opportunities just the car alone, or the way I dress, right? Maybe not right now with like a Vans thing, but when you dress nicely or you go to nice locations or you live in a nice location, you have access to this network and opportunities that are just given to you. If you look good, let's say you look like a homeless guy because you don't care and you're hyper spiritual hippie, but you're struggling to make money and survive, and deep down you actually hate your life, nobody's going to come up and talk to you or want to talk to you. If you dress nicely and you're presentable and you show that you invest in how people perceive you, then people are going to come up and talk to you. And if a billionaire comes up and talks to you and gives you $1 million opportunity, that's available to you now. Now that's more of a luck game, but it is a game, and it affects your mindset. It's abundance, being able to spend this money knowing that you have the resources and knowledge and education to make it back. The thing with that is just don't let materialism consume you. Mechanics can enjoy cars because that's their entire life. Right? You wouldn't expect, like, I'm not going to judge a mechanic for buying the most fancy Ferrari in the world because that's what they love. That's what they've spent so much time developing their mind and expertise around. That's what makes life meaningful to them. Now, strategy number 5 is another touchy one, but it's degeneracy. Now, a lot of the Huberman cult and straight edge people don't really like talking about alcohol, or they think that nobody should ever drink alcohol in their life or do any form of recreational drug. And I don't think that in the slightest. Obviously, there's addiction. Obviously, there's many things and excuses that people could come up with. I would encourage you to set your narrow identity and ideology about alcohol aside for now and realize that some people can just have a drink with dinner or go out and get screwed up occasionally. This happened in my past, but like I would drink a decent amount, like in college, obviously, and a bit after college. I don't really drink like a ton right now, but I'd say like 1-2 drinks a week at dinner with friends. And I don't know, it always makes me think to like how some people in foreign countries like Italy or whatever, like they smoke and they drink excessively and they live longer than the biohackers and people that are overly stressed about their health, simply because the ones that are stressing about their health, the stress is more unhealthy than smoking the cigarette all the time. And so they die earlier. And that's one thing that always sticks out to me is like, if you're so neurotic about just having a drop of alcohol, like that's probably more unhealthy than the guy that's having a drop of alcohol. So my point with degeneracy being a strategy for tactical stress is if you feel all pent up and you feel like you aren't making progress, but you're working towards a goal, then maybe you need to go out. Maybe you need to have some fun. Maybe you need to let loose. Maybe you need to let loose a little bit too much, because the next day when you wake up and you feel like shit and you really see what it's like to not be able to make progress towards your goals, you feel the struggle that it takes. You don't have ideas. You don't have anything. You're just sitting there stuck and you're like, why did I do that? And then the next day or 2 days after, when you're feeling better, that surge of energy allows you to attack at full force. And that brings us to our last point of just emotional transmutation, or allowing yourself to be angry, allowing yourself to have those negative emotions and feel into them and bounce back out the other side, to use stress in a good way. Use stress, EU stress. That's a thing, a good stress, where you are channeling it into a better future. And another thing you have to understand here is that regret is a necessary part of life. You can't avoid it. And those that try to avoid regrets end up regretting their decisions more, because they're like, I wasn't supposed to do that. When the person that knows regrets are a part of life, I regret that, I'm going to change. Because most people dwell on their regrets as if they can change them, when they can't. They can only change the choices that they make right now. So you have two options. You can view them as ugly stains that make life worse, or view them as cracks that can be sealed with better future decisions. There is one pattern that I've noticed in everyone that is trying to improve their life. The pain of where you are must outweigh the pain of what other people think. People will think you are stupid for making stupid decisions. People will talk about you when you are making big changes. Most of the time, they just want to entertain themselves. They don't want the information behind your decisions, and you will learn to ignore them with time. What's the other option? Let your dreams die on the shelf because people say something you don't like? That's a great way to end up like everyone else. I hope you enjoyed this video, my friends. We're kind of going back to more like rants and just me going off the cusp. I like doing this a lot more, so I'm going to keep doing it. Hopefully you guys like it. Let me know if you do. Art of Focus, my book, is coming soon. Early November. There's a link to sign up just to get updates. First link in the bio. To our writer, Link in the description if you want to learn high impact writing, how to build your brand just online, and then digital economics, how to turn yourself into the business, a masterclass with all my systems and strategies, other cool free stuff like Power Planner, 7 Days to Genius Ideas Challenge. All of that's in the description. Until next time, peace. Life is like a dark room. On occasion, we find a candle so that we can see, but not for long. The candle provides vision and direction, but the flame will die out, sparking fear in our souls that we will never find our way unless we move with faith that we will find the next candle. The human mind bounces between order and chaos. Chaos is our default state. Clarity is the byproduct of ordered information that fills our consciousness. Our mind is clear when what we pay attention to is clear. This is an explanation for human behavior, and it explains why people report that the most miserable part of their lives are on a Sunday between the times of 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. when they have nothing to do. People say that they hate their jobs, yet jobs provide a clear state of mind that is arguably much more enjoyable than being at home alone with your thoughts. Humans fill their days with activities that structure their mind. We always want to be doing something, seeing people, playing games, writing, designing, creating, preferably investing our attention in something useful. And when we are alone, psychic entropy ensues. And so entropy is that everything tends towards disorder, like how one day you will die, one day the sun will die out, one day the universe will die, and you can see that anything tangible will eventually decompose. And that is unless we as humans attempt to reverse entropy. That's all we're really doing here, is trying to solve the problems that lead to things falling apart. We're trying to extend our life on this earth. Everything, even something as small as organizing your bookshelf after it gets dirty, is with the larger survival goal in the back of your mind of, I need to survive, we need to live as long as possible, we need to become immortal, and that's what really everyone is creating to do. And so psychic entropy is when we lose the frame or the order of our mind by letting go of a coherent line of thought. And this happens more than you think. When we are sitting around and without actually doing anything, when we're alone with our thoughts, we may have some structured thoughts occasionally. We may have a coherent line of thought, but eventually that ends. That lasts like 2 to 3 seconds, and then eventually you catch on to a thought, and then your thought process goes unconscious and you can't keep track of where your thoughts are going to end up. So our mind grasps at negative thoughts and then they multiply. And so the cure to this state of mind, this unordered state of mind, feeling lost, overwhelmed, and anxious, is knowing how to order your mind. It is knowing how to direct your attention. Meditation teaches you to focus on your breath. Metacognition teaches you to question your thoughts. Learning to be alone is learning to order your mind in any circumstance for enjoyment. And I think it's ironic that people think they want to maximize the freedom in their life, because that's the opposite of what they want. People don't want freedom, they want autonomy. They don't want limitations projected on them, they want to create their own limitations. And so clarity is the key to enjoyment, but enjoyment is not the only piece of the puzzle. We can enjoy a life that someone assigns to us. We can enjoy working a 9-to-5 job. We can enjoy doing what people tell us to do. But at the end of the day, that does not bring fulfillment. Sustainable long-term clarity comes from 2 sources. 1 is self-generated goals in alignment with a conscious future, and 2 is society-generated goals in alignment with an unconscious future. 1 is created, 1 is assigned. If we don't want our life to be the product of someone else's vision, we must create our own. Let's dive in. Most people don't need motivation, they need clarity. Motivation is like standing on one side of a canyon. The other side looks like a utopia. Everything you could ever want. Beautiful people, music, cars, houses, all calling your name to take the leap, but you don't have a way to get over to the other side of the canyon. Clarity is the first plank of the bridge to the other side. And motivation can be illustrated by the behavior molecule dopamine. When something is far away from us, we desire it more when we do not have it. And when we acquire that thing, like a nice house, nice car, nice watch, a pretty person, or even something like an internet course or a new book, we feel good for a bit, but then it becomes normal. It becomes a part of our life. It's not something that we desire anymore because we've acquired it. And so we know this as the honeymoon phase, right? When you want something so bad, and then we finally get it, there's maybe a 2-week to 4-week period where you are in love with that thing. And not really in love, but more so infatuated with that thing. And now dopamine is not bad. It is one of the most important neurotransmitters to understand in your life, in how you behave. It is the drive behind your dreams, and that should be utilized. But most people drown in motivation, and they see so many things that are out of their reach every single day, especially on social media. And so over and over again, they waste this precious resource that could be used to act on their dreams. And even if they do acquire those dreams, like a fancy car or a nice watch, they don't know how to swap their focus to sustain the enjoyment of that thing. Because while dopamine is more so raised when you desire something that is outside of you or something that you do not have, there are other neurotransmitters that are called the here and now neurotransmitters, like serotonin, oxytocin, endorphins, and endocannabinoids that give you satisfaction and appreciation for what's in front of you, the things that you have in your own personal space. And so while some people take drugs like Molly, marijuana, even alcohol, and I'm not judging, I do these things occasionally too, there are more sustainable ways to bring this satisfaction, fulfillment, enjoyment into your everyday life with the things that you have, to appreciate where you are and who you are. The first is mindfulness in detail. So with this, you're trying to notice the detail that your senses can provide, because most people are living in this superficial state. Everything around them is normal to them. So when you go on a walk, try to see detail that you've never seen before. Maybe it's in the trees and how the leaves are so detailed, or a bush that you've never actually looked too closely at, or maybe even the concrete under your feet. We're trying to snap out of the mindless and normal routines that keep us living on the surface. Notice the extravagant details in the leaves of a tree, the blades of grass, and the shine of the light on cars as they pass you by. When you cook a meal, notice the differences in texture, taste, and feel. Try to pick apart the ingredients. When listening to a song, dig deep. Can you hear the subtle layers in the background? Those were intentional by the creator. They want you to notice them. And so you can see why food critics, music lovers, and yogis enjoy certain activities so much. It's because they're so immersed in the present moment, and their mind is being flooded with the here and now neurotransmitters, which is much more sustainable than constantly pursuing that cheap dopamine hit. And so the mindfulness in detail is really us just trying to get in touch with reality, because reality is an ever-flowing quality of experience, and we're missing out on the depth of that experience every single day. And so you can apply this strategy when you acquire something new that is borderlining boredom, right? Because your pursuits, maybe you have been pursuing this one thing so long that when you get it and its shine is starting to fade, that if you don't want to put it onto the shelf, you need to learn how to enjoy it. You need to notice the detail in it, far beyond just your senses as well. And that leads into point number 2, which is developing an intrinsic philosophy. So let's imagine a young bodybuilder. They started going to the gym for vanity, but they stayed for the therapy. They desired a strong aesthetic physique so that they could attract a partner and command respect. But after a year or two, their progress drastically slowed down. They built a great body. So what's next? It didn't really change how many people they attracted. Maybe it bumped them up the social hierarchy a bit, but for what? A bit more attention? Is it still worth spending 7 to 8 hours a week on this endeavor? So they look inward. What has this brought to my life? Why do I keep showing up every day? Where would I have spent my time otherwise? How has this impacted the people I meet, the conversations I can have, and the career opportunities open to me? They realize that their material pursuit was deeply immaterial, as are most, but people glance over that fact. Their pursuit for better gave them an identity that influenced positive decisions. It prevented them from being like the mindless masses who pursue nothing. So the lesson is this: it's better to pursue something superficial than it is to do nothing with your life. You either learn what you don't want so you can pursue what you want, or you find depth, meaning, and spirituality along the way. And so the third thing here for how to practice appreciation and satisfaction in the moment is learning and education. Because 95% of people would scoff at someone who purchases a new car like a Porsche GT3. That's because they only see the surface. And they can't open their mind to see that a person's life and identity is more than just a snapshot of that situation. What if the person that bought it was a mechanic? What if they derived a deep satisfaction by digging into the machinery? Now, What if the average Joe made the same purchase, but they decided to learn something new? They can learn their way into a deeper crevice of reality through education. They study the car's parts, history, and how to drive better. They start visiting the track, and the car becomes a consistent part of their lifestyle, one that brings enjoyment and flow. They construct a house of meaning under the foundation of material. Most people keep laying a foundation and never build anything worth keeping. With this knowledge, the key to the good life is a disciplined balance between meaningful dopamine sources and creating satisfaction when you achieve those goals. So now we need to talk about enjoyment versus pleasure and choosing your dopamine sources wisely. Enjoyment comes from investing attention. Pleasure comes from spending attention. Investments are long-term, purchases are short-term. Enjoyment is process-focused, pleasure is outcome-focused. Enjoyment is progress toward a long-term goal. Pleasure is achieving a goal without effort. Our goal is to maximize the enjoyment in our everyday life. That's all anyone is trying to do. But most people don't zoom out to gain a perspective that is distraction proof while pursuing those goals. They're so narrowly focused on what can bring pleasure right here and right now. Literally, the key to life is just zooming out, expanding your focus, expanding your mind, collecting more perspective. The highest perspective is the one that includes them all, because we don't want to get stuck scrolling social media, having meaningless sex in more ways than physical, and winning arguments in the comments that lead to absolutely nothing useful. We want to act on our goals, build something beneficial in reality, and impact others in a way that brings enjoyment into our lives. And so I talk a lot about having a vision for the future. Why? Because at every point in my life where I have made substantial progress in a short period of time, while enjoying every second of it, I was hell-bent on actualizing a vision for the future that I held in my mind. And people that have experienced the same thing know this power. And that's why I write about it so much, because I want to understand it. I want to dissect it. I want to piece together a way for people to develop vision in their own lives so they can experience that feeling. And so one concept that I've coined that has helped many is the anti-vision. In brief, it's how you realize what you don't want. And does this mean that you can get rid of the things that you don't want immediately? No, you can't just quit your job and move out of your hometown if you've built an entire house of responsibilities around that. There's more on the line than money if you just quit your job. Be smart about this. This is a long-term game. So to create your anti-vision, here's what we have to do. First is observe society as a habit. Pay close attention to the people around you in any situation. Why do they do what they do? What is it leading towards? Are they somebody that you want to be? It could be as simple as observing the groceries that people put in their baskets, or observing their body and realizing that you don't want to end up slow, lifeless, groggy all the time. Number two is to reflect on your past. What are experiences that you never want to experience again? What were the lowest lows of your life? What caused them? Have you done anything to prevent that from happening again? Make this a conscious practice in your life. Number three is to make a list of things that you don't want. Pull out a notebook and get specific. This list should make you feel uncomfortable. Keep this somewhere safe, and when something new comes to mind, which it will, because not every single idea is going to come to mind in the span of 10 to 20 minutes as you're writing this out. It's going to come to your mind over years and years and years of experiencing the things that pop the ideas into your head, and you need somewhere to write it down for this. Number four is to realize where you will be if you keep doing the same thing. You are your habits. Where will your life end up if you have the same lifestyle in 10 years? Do you want that? Number five is to transmute that energy into a passionate vision. What will you have to learn, build, and execute daily to avoid your anti-vision? And if you want to turn your vision into a brand and your notes into content so that you can build an authentic and purposeful one-person business, then check out 2-Hour Writer. So we just came up with your anti-vision, but now your vision. Your vision is your frame. It is what you hold in the back of your mind to guide your daily actions. It is the lens from which you view your goals, and from your vision and your goals, those are the lens that help you view and perceive daily situations so that you can make better decisions. It's not about having long-term or short-term focus, it's about having both. Zoom out. Your life is a culmination of your choices, and if you want to make better ones, you must expand your mind, consciousness, and focus beyond your worries. So now that you've created a specific anti-vision for your future, you've primed your mind for pattern recognition so that you can spot opportunities that will aid in you actualizing the vision for your future, or just realizing, oh, okay, this is not what I want to do. I'm not going to put this in my grocery basket because I'm only now aware of it because I've realized that this is damaging the health that I want to have going into my vision for the future. And so yes, it is helpful to get even more specific on what you want out of your future, but your vision is imaginary. It's a vision, right? It should be culminated over time. And it's very helpful to write things out. And I would encourage you do that, to write out the opposite of your anti-vision, because your vision may not be strong yet. Your vision gets strong over time. As I said, not everything is going to come to mind in the 10 to 20 minutes that you're going to spend doing this. That's literally impossible. It's going to culminate and expand and develop over years and years and years of experiencing life, failing, succeeding, and having data points from which to iterate on your vision. So now that we have a vision for the future, we need to learn how to learn and build, because schools can't and won't teach you how to build your dreams. Schools are intimately connected with the government, politics, and economy, and their conditioning process, or education, is set up to keep these things going, to keep them alive. Anything that gives the individual power is a threat. So self-education is a requirement on your journey. And it's obvious that you can't reach your goals at your current level of development, or else you'd already achieve them. You need to develop skills. You need to build things. You need to fail. You need to gain experience. Because it also wouldn't be challenging. If you could achieve your goals right now, it wouldn't be challenging. And challenge gives you a place to focus and order your mind. That's what makes life enjoyable, because challenge plays a crucial role in the flow state, enjoyment, and dopamine, but only if you take on challenges that aren't too boring or difficult. Play at your level, but try to make it to the next level. And if you want to retain everything that you learn, or at least the important things, not the noise, you can't learn literally everything that comes across your mind. You must remember the important things that actualize your vision. That's how you learn everything. And if you want to do that, then you must learn as you build, or build as you learn. So here's what you do. First is to write down 10 to 20 specific skills, interests, or topics that will actualize your vision. Because we need clarity on what to do every single day to actualize that vision. Most people fail to make tangible progress because they don't realize that a lifelong habit of education, skill acquisition, and practice is how you build a better life. This is not optional. If you don't have time carved out each day to practice your craft for life, then you aren't going to make it anywhere meaningful. Life itself is a practice, and most people aren't showing up. They sit at home and distract themselves with mindless entertainment. You don't have your ideal lifestyle because you aren't living that lifestyle right now, but on a smaller scale. As you get better at what you do, the time you spend doing it will increase, and the impact of what you're doing will be more in less time, and money will become inevitable. If you're starting as a designer or a writer, then you're going to design or write for an hour a day every single morning. As you get better, you're going to be able to do the same amount of work that took that 1 hour in 20 minutes. And so not only are you doing better and more work within that first hour, but you're able to incorporate other things and start to build, let's say, a business for it, and slowly increase the time you spend doing it until it becomes your lifestyle. The same goes for the gym. The same goes for every single healthy habit that the successful people do on a daily basis. They didn't just poof, land into this lifestyle after they had a successful business. It was their lifestyle that allowed them to build the business. And so the key to all of this is specificity. Don't write down web design for one of your curiosities or interests that you're looking to write down here. Write down how to create landing pages that are actually useful to businesses. Don't write down the gym. Write down diet and training principles to lose 10 pounds of fat in 6 weeks. Do this 10 times minimum. And if you don't see how the skills, interests, or curiosities aid in your vision, then remove them. So step 2, after writing down 10 to 20 interests, we're going to leverage dopamine through pattern recognition and momentum. Connecting ideas and noting patterns in reality raises dopamine levels in the brain. It's the same reason that cocaine feels so good, dopamine, but this is much more sustainable. It is addictive. And this process becomes more powerful when you build momentum. Think of it like doing a Sudoku puzzle. You come up with one answer to fill in, and dopamine increases. And what that does is it narrows your mind with that feedback to find other answers. So once you find one answer, then you're like, oh, there's one more. Oh, there's another one. And you build momentum and the dopamine continues to increase and it feels good and it keeps you engaged. And so the same thing happens when you have an idea at night and you're like, that's a great idea, I need to write that down. And then you have another one and then another one and you have 10 ideas that you have no idea what to do with aside from write down and keep them safe for the morning when you're going to go and do focused work. And so when you notice one idea that connects to your vision, your signal to noise ratio increases. And this happens when you're studying your interests and curiosities. So your attention narrows on more relevant information, not only on the things that you're reading or watching or listening to, but also the ones that were already in your mind. And so your mind lights up with excitement and your vision just grows that much stronger. And this is why it feels so good to live with purpose. And so that was step number 2, is leveraging dopamine and pattern recognition. Step number 3 is to learn and build. That way you eliminate useless information, because everyone is telling you what to do. They're projecting what they deem important onto you, what they see as signal, but what to you is 95% of the time noise. And if you aren't where you want to be in your life, then nothing is as important as your own goals. Not the news, not your friends' relationship problems, and definitely not who's getting elected. And so on the election part, I always find it funny that people get so up in arms about like gas prices or whether or not they can have a baby. And it's, don't get me wrong there. Like, I understand that it's your body, your choice, or whatever it is. I can go either way. I see both perspectives, right? As I said earlier, the highest perspective is all perspectives and being able to hold both of those and pull truth. What I'm saying here is that most people hide behind the fact that it's easier to submit a vote than it is to change your life. They can't zoom out and see another way that is more effective to bring their beliefs into reality than by submitting a vote. Because if you're worried about gas prices, then why haven't you zoomed out and developed a strategy or a plan to build a business so that you never have to worry about gas prices again? That is 10 times more powerful, not only for your life, but for other people's lives, and not having to rely on one measly vote that may not even get counted. And again, if you zoom out, you can build an audience and present your perspective to millions so that you actually have an impact on the votes about your bodily rights or whatever it may be. That's how they keep you locked into this thing, is by keeping your vision, your focus narrowed in on their vision for what they want, rather than you zooming out and crafting a plan to find a better way to getting what you want. I don't care what your beliefs are on your bodily rights or whatever you want to do. If you want it to become reality, then take it into your hands as much as you can. Develop a vision for the future and actualize that by yourself. Take control of it and forget about the things that you have very little control over. So to create, you need boundaries for your creativity, or else things get too chaotic and overwhelming. You need goals turned into projects so that you have something tangible to work on. And the goals and projects provide boundaries for your learning and creativity. So break down your vision into goals now: yearly, monthly, weekly, and daily. Turn all of those into milestones for a project that you can work on, like a personal brand, which is the fuel for anything you want to build, or a one-person business, which is the starting point that I believe 99% of people should start with before trying to go after any other business model, because it's something that is holistic and it evolves with you, and it's not a static business model that sounds too good to be true. So with your vision in mind, start building and learning. Work on your project daily, regardless of if you know what you're doing, because you don't know what you're doing because you haven't registered that as a problem or actually started the project and hit a problem that makes you realize, oh, this is what I need to learn. And you're never going to find that if you don't start. You can learn, you can be an expert at something in the books, but if you don't actually do it, you're going to hit the same problem as if you knew nothing. And then you're going to have to go and research that problem anyway. So it's better to start, then learn, because that is the best way to learn, is to encounter a real world problem, research specific information to solve it, keep a steady flow of information from your consumption, solve the problem, enjoy the dopamine, and let momentum carry you into a season of intensity. The rest is in your hands. That's it for this video. Check out Digital Economics, 2-Hour Writer, other cool links in the description if you want to productize yourself or learn a high value skill that is high impact digital writing.
Joe Rogan Podcast. Check it out.
Joe Rogan Experience.
Train by day, Joe Rogan Podcast by night, all day.
Hey. Hello, Jimmy.
Hey, Joe, how are you?
Good to see you, buddy.
It's very nice to see you. This is, it's a hell of a setup.
Thank you.
I'm
Thank
like
you very
in
much.
Austin, Texas. I've been here about 18 hours, and it's, 5 stars on TripAdvisor so far.
Did you do a set last night?
I didn't do a set, but I went to the club.
Yeah.
And the club it's phenomenal.
Thank you.
It's
Thank you.
almost like someone with an unlimited budget built a comedy club. That's what it felt like, Joe. I don't know if your business manager has a view on this.
Yeah,
I think something along the lines
I'm
of...
not good at taking advice.
Yeah, but it's so great. It's so set up from the comic's point of view.
Yeah.
It's like no food.
Yeah.
No food is a great choice.
Yeah, you can't have food.
Yeah, people
Go
can
eat
eat
before.
afterwards. Yeah,
eat
or
after,
afterwards.
eat before. There's so many places to eat on 6th Street. There's a nice pizza place right next door.
Your neighbors are going to love you as well,
Yeah.
because it's that thing. If you go, it creates a bit of a community, and it's full. It's like packed with people, and it's kind of it's phenomenal. Great space.
Well, it's one of those Kevin Costner things. You know, you build it, they will come, from the Field of Dreams.
Yeah. Well, it feels kind of bigger than that as well in terms of you've come out here, and what are you giving back?
Yeah.
And comedy's given you everything, as it has me, and you go, well, what can you give back? What can you do for your community? And it feels like that's a great thing to do.
Well, it also seemed like I kind of had to do it because when I moved here, I had this idea that I'd just be able to like do whatever local spots I could and then go on the road. And I kind of could. But one of the things that I've realized is that comics need community. It's very important. And that's one of the things that we really had at the Comedy Store that made the Comedy Store so special, is that it wasn't just that it was a great place to work and come up with new material and work on it, but it was also a great place to meet other people that were doing the same thing.
It's
And you get
interesting,
to sit
comedy
and
as
talk.
opposed to acting.
Yeah.
You know that thing? Alan Havey said this great thing to me. He said, comedians, we're out for ourselves, but in it together. I thought, it's really interesting, that thing of like going, everyone's doing their own things. Comedy is not like acting. It's not a zero-sum game.
Right.
So you doing your thing, no matter how successful you are, has no impact on my thing. If anything, you pull me up.
Yes.
So comedy becomes like a bigger thing. If someone does fantastically and they're playing hockey arenas, then more people are pulled up through the clubs and the theaters into the arenas.
Sure.
It feels like we're living in a golden age for comedy. It feels to me like this is what it must have felt like to work in music or movies in the 70s.
Yeah.
It's like it feels like there's something culturally going on with comedy where it feels like it's got a value that's people need it. People need to go out and feel like they're part of a community. And I suppose when you think about what we're doing on stage, it is pretty special. We're letting people into our minds and we go into their bodies.
Yeah.
We're possessing them. We change their physical state. It's extraordinary.
It is extraordinary. It really is like a drug. You're giving people a happy drug.
Well, it's two. I mean, it's the endorphin, because you don't quite know when the punch is coming, and then the serotonin of laughter.
Yeah.
And the live experience as well. It's like the live experience is so incredible for comedy, even as opposed to music, because what you get when you go out to a comedy club, well, you'll laugh 30 times more than watching the footage. And really, and props to Netflix. Netflix have been part of the reason comedy's having this golden age. But you go watching something on screen is like, that's how you find out what you want to go and see live.
Yeah, and live
Because-
is so much better.
Because physically, it gets you in a different way. And you see people kind of coming, their body language changes, their whole, and they get into this kind of, this state with the performer. They breathe with the performer. They roll with it. And it's so immersive. And you don't remember a word of what the comedian said, but you remember how they made you feel.
Yeah, there's also this shared experience of being there with other people that really feels good for people when you're laughing with a bunch of people.
Especially in a world where the individual has become sacrosanct and the tribe has been left to the side, and people want to feel a bit tribal. They want to feel like they're part of something. Why do people want to go to music festivals and South by Southwest and Glastonbury, and they want to go and see a comedy show? They want to be in a room with 1,000 people that all have the same sense of humor and feel a bit bonded. It's
Yeah,
nice.
for sure. Yeah, there's that, and there's also with our art form, it's uniquely coming from one person. Where it's unless you're a singer songwriter, there's really not, or an author. Those are like probably the only other people. Any other mass form of entertainment that you're seeing a lot of different people collaborating which is good, like in a film. You have to have that. But there's something about an individual's perspective and someone going, what the fuck is this?
Well,
And
it's
you know?
I mean, for me, that thing of, stand-up is naturally progressive. For me, it's like stand-up is about, there's an Overton window about what, that theory of the Overton window, what is and what isn't acceptable to talk about publicly.
Right.
And comedy is always pushing the edge of that. Not just edgy comedy. I do quite edgy stuff. It's not about being edgy particularly. Even someone doing observational stuff, Seinfeld saying the world is crazy, nothing makes any sense, this is ridiculous. He says the thing and it pushes, or someone talking about their relationships and their kids, it pushes what's acceptable to talk about in everyday life further.
Yeah.
And it expands that window. And so we have more open, meaningful conversations. Like you go and see a comedy show, you have a much more interesting chat afterwards. You go to comedy on a date night, it becomes like a more interesting conversation because something the guy said sparks something. It pushes the conversation. It's naturally progressive.
Yeah, it is. And also in this day and age, it's one of the rare places where you can hear people speak freely about controversial subjects. And in my club, we lock up the phone so they're not self-conscious, and they're also not distracted. And then you don't have to worry about
but that
people
thing of,
filming
like,
clips.
It is weird, isn't it? The locking up the phones is such an interesting point because that's what people want.
Yeah.
They want that boundary of going, I'm in a live.
Yeah.
Like there's lots of people that you would watch your favorite show. You'd watch, I don't know, whatever you like Game of Thrones or an MMA fight or whatever. And if you have your phone near you, there's a temptation to check the news and refresh and see what's going on and to ruin the experience for yourself. But somehow being out in public, like you're aware, like it's performative being in a crowd. Like we're not the only ones performing at a comedy club or in a theater. The audience are performing. People, how you doing? Like you ask an audience, how you doing? And they go, yay! Well, no one says that one-on-one. No one's ever, hey, how you doing, Joe? Yeah! You sound psychotic.
Right.
But in an audience, it's entirely acceptable to be that person, to dance and to clap along. You'd look strange listening to a band play live and just standing and listening. And not dancing in the crowd.
Right.
And that thing about going, well, it's performative being in the audience. Don't think you're the only one performing. They're all with you. They're all, the laughter is, you're signaling. It doesn't mean that it's fake laughter, but you're signaling to other people that you got it. And you're applauding when you kind of agree a little bit.
Yeah.
There's a rhythm to it. Being in an audience is a performance. And it's so fun to do.
Yeah, it is. It's my favorite thing to watch still. After all these years, I watched Christina Pazitsky last night. It was awesome.
Was it fantastic?
Oh, she's so funny. But it's fun. It's fun to laugh. It's fun to see someone's writing and see like where they're going with ideas. And
it's also the same and totally different. It's a guy on stage with a mic, girl on stage with a mic, and it just what's he doing with this? It's a totally different thing. It's that self-authored thing. I mean, the thing I'm working on at the moment, I'm slightly jealous of the club. I'll be honest. I sort of saw the club last night. I'm like, this is quite something to do, to set up a club and to have that community, and it's great. And I think that I'm working at the moment on I don't know whether it's a book or whether it's I think it might be like an online course, but a comedy course.
And how to do stand-up?
How to write jokes, how to be a stand-up.
That's great.
I think, here's my vision for it. I think we're going through a golden period, but maybe it's just beginning. Comedy's quite a new medium anyway.
Yeah.
We get to be the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, or certainly someone in our generation does. If you think about it like George Carlin and Richard Pryor were John the Baptist, or someone's coming through. It's like that thing of like, it feels like it's getting bigger and bigger. My vision is it gets taught in schools. So we teach music and we teach drama and art. And I think stand-up comedy is an art form. And I think we need to get less magical thinking and more, okay, let's put down a language like music, you can write it. Let's come up with I'm working on like 50 joke types, but let's come up with a way of analyzing this and teach people how to do it. Because what does it give you? Like if your kid does stand-up comedy, okay, well, they have to find their voice. They have to look at things from a different angle, a different perspective. It's about pattern recognition. These are all transferable skills. And it's about finding your voice. The reason every stand-up is interesting to watch is because it's individual voices.
Yes.
And really, what's growing up about? What's school about? Finding your voice, finding out what you're about, finding out who you are. Like, I don't think it's a dumb idea to teach stand-up comedy and to say, well, everyone should give this a go. Because even people that have done, I've got a couple of people that come and see me live or whatever that tell me, oh, I did like 4 or 5 gigs 10 years ago. But they enjoy stand-up comedy more than the average person. It's like someone who's can play a little bit of guitar,
Right.
goes and sees and goes, well, this is...
Right.
They have an inkling of how good it is.
Yes.
Someone that does a little bit of jiu-jitsu, I imagine, goes and sees an MMA fight and goes, he's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
They've got like some idea. It's like that. They've gone from unconscious incompetence to conscious incompetence.
Yeah. We've actually talked many times about putting together a course, and we've thought about doing it maybe at the club and, you know, just having professional comics that are on their way up, that are just starting, and having like a workshop where we could talk to them about material, about the importance of editing, about getting to the point quickly, you know, and how to...
I think it would be great, because how many comics do we know, guys that do this for a living and are doing great, that do have magical thinking? Well, it just comes to me, and I need to do this to make it happen. Like, understanding how to write music has never damaged anyone's creativity. So I think the idea of like analyzing it and treating it like a job, and how do you sit down and write? And some people go, well, I don't sit down and write. It just occurs to me. And you go, well, okay, but like, it's like there's a great quote by Chuck Close. You know the artist Chuck Close?
No.
He's a great artist, like pointillist. And he said, inspiration is for amateurs. The rest of us just go to work.
Yeah, that's similar to Stephen Pressfield's work, you know, The War of Art.
Oh, I love that book.
Yeah, fantastic book.
It's really something, isn't it? But
Yeah.
I think I'm onto something here, because I think a lot of people want to do something creative with their lives. I think a lot of people want to. They like stand-up comedy. It's becoming a bigger thing. I think more people will want to try it, and just giving them the kind of the instruction manual early on.
Yeah.
So because then what they're having to do is what we did. You watch a lot of comedy, and then you kind of reverse engineer what you hear people do. So you watch the greats. You watch Stephen Wright and Emo Phillips and Rita Rudner and Wanda Sykes and whatever you're looking at, and you go, okay, so they must have had the punchline first, and then they must have, if they were doing that wordplay, that's probably how they did it. Okay, so you can take all the structure, you can steal the structure, and then come up with your own content. It's a great kind of, you know.
Yeah. Well, that's what a lot of people do in the beginning, right? They make jokes that are similar to a joke that someone that they enjoy would write. You know,
Yes,
like say
it's in their voice. It's in their. They find themselves kind of doing. And then there's different ages in comedy where certain people kind of come through and have a real effect on how everyone's performing.
like David Tell.
Yeah.
Patrice O'Neill used to always say, let's talk about how many babies he had.
Yeah.
Like, and that so many comics copied his voice. And
I mean,
David Tell's like probably one of the bigger ones.
Well, I think he's been incredibly influential. It feels like he's got the props later on, but I mean, it kind of.
He's the worst at promoting of any him.
Yeah.
There's two brilliant comedians that are fucking terrible at promoting, and because of that, they don't get the credit they deserve. Colin Quinn and David Tell. Those are, in my opinion, those are the two that should be selling out arenas.
Yeah,
And
I mean, Colin Quinn's solo shows, all I think is there 3 or 4 now.
He just did one at the club a couple weeks ago, and the whole staff, everyone, the comics, the staff, everyone was raving about how brilliant his writing was, the timing. They said he put on a masterclass.
It's almost like everything he says is in that comedic tone.
Yeah.
He's been incredibly influential. I mean, I think his shows are fabulous. And then, Attell, it feels like you haven't put out enough material. I'm kind of almost like, I don't want to be morbid here, but David Tell's not going to live forever. And at some stage you go, there's not enough. I mean, there's Shanks for the memories, which is great. And there's lots of kind of appearances here and there, but it feel like I want more.
Yes. Well,
I mean, I love Bumping Mics. I thought Bumping Mics was like...
It's great.
I mean, that's another great, Netflix, hats off, to give Jeff Ross and Dave, to make it kind of feel like it was in 3 parts, and it felt like a visit to New York. It felt really... And those shows, whenever there's a festival and those guys come and play, it feels like, oh, well, that's the late night hang.
Yeah, it's fun. Yeah, it's so improvisational. And they're both so good off the cuff. But it's
Magnificent.
I think what Dave enjoys is just the work. I mean, when you talk to him, he gets up in the morning or whenever he gets up, he goes to the coffee shop, smokes a cigarette, drinks coffee, and starts writing. Goes over the news, finds out what's going on. When he goes into a town, like say he's in Cleveland, what's going on in Cleveland? Oh, there's a scandal with the mayor. Oh, okay. There's something going on with the roads. Oh, okay. And then he starts writing things about it. The team sucks. Oh, let's write about that.
This is the life, right? It's the I don't know. I mean, maybe he's as successful as he needs to be because really, what's this about?
Right.
It's quite stoic. I think I've become quite the stoic on like going. Well, the world ordered a stand-up comedian. I need to honor that.
Yes.
I'm a stand-up, so anything that's not writing jokes or performing jokes is not doing the thing.
Right.
And the thing is all I care about.
I would add to that it's good to experience life too. And then I think one of the things that accentuates life is accentuating your perspective on things. And that comes from experiences. And there's one problem that some comics have where they just perform and travel all the time. And a lot of their jokes,
Airplane material.
yeah. It revolves around what they know.
It's hard. That work-life balance is very tricky. I've had kids quite late in life, and work-life balance is hard. It's difficult. Being a comedian, here's the first world problem I have. Work is more fun than fun.
Yeah,
it's more fun than fun.
More fun than any vacation.
What are you doing on a night out?
Yeah.
No, we went and had dinner. Okay.
Right.
Did 1,000 people clap when you walked in the restaurant? No,
Right.
they didn't.
Did they
you
howl
get a standing
laughing?
ovation as you
Right.
left the restaurant?
Right.
Well, no, I didn't, and I
Yeah.
thought I did very well at dinner.
I have often thought of how many people live from the cradle to the grave and never kill. And what a sad thing that is to never experience that. Just destroying an audience for an hour.
Here's the depressing thought. Some people live and die and they never hear their own voice. So maybe teaching stand-up comedy. I kind of think that might be the next thing. I'm 50 now. I feel like that might be the next thing of like going. And I'm kind of looking for things that will make me feel like an imposter. I want to feel like an imposter. I want imposter syndrome. I like it. And I feel very comfortable in a theatre stage now playing to 2,000 people. Great. I want to play arenas so I don't feel as comfortable. And I want to kind of become a bit of a teacher because I think becoming a teacher, I think I'll go, I'm not good enough to teach anyone. I can't wind your neck in. You're being presumptuous. I think that's a good feeling to chase.
Yeah.
Because imposter syndrome is like it's the most normal thing in the world. As you level up through life, you should always feel like a bit of an
Yes.
imposter.
I've talked to virtually every great comic, and they all have had that.
Yeah.
They all had that moment in their life. They're like, when the people are clapping and they're introducing their name and everybody goes crazy, like, why are they clapping? Like,
Yeah.
What the fuck is this? Some
I
fraud.
used to open with that like, in theatres. Let's manage our expectations, people. It's
Yeah.
like it's a terrible thing when you get like when the applause is louder when you walk on than when you walk off.
Oh, yes.
Like, and we've all had like,
Yeah.
okay, you were excited to see me, but the show wasn't ready yet.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's always that. It's also, there's an incredible lack of documentation about the process of stand-up comedy. And it's one of the great things about podcasts is that it has served as an archive where you can, I mean, I've had dozens and dozens of conversations with great comics where I ask them about their process. And what
It
they
is. I mean,
do.
partly that's the thing driving it. I mean, I think the podcast thing has taken off, and it turns out talking about comedy in the process is interesting. I mean,
Yeah.
I think there's breadcrumbs there. Like Steve Martin's book, Born Standing Up. Mm-hmm. I think that's if anyone's interested in the secrets of comedy, they're out there, and it's about $10.99 in all good bookshops. But it's that thing of like decoding that and making that kind of coming up with a language, coming up with something that you could go give a 14-year-old and they could, write their own jokes. And I mean, they might not do it as a career, but it might be a fun hobby to have. At the moment, comedy feels like it's for the professionals, and there's no amateur circuit. But like music and sports, you've got professionals. Okay, you've got the greats, and then you've got people that just do it for fun.
Yeah.
Why not have that going on? Why not have more comedians, more comedy clubs?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that we set up at our club is 2 nights of open mic nights. So we have open mic night on Sunday and open mic night on Monday. And then we have the staff of the club are all the door people are all professional comedians who auditioned for that job with their act. So they are people that aspire to be professionals, and this is sort of like an
I
apprenticeship.
met a couple of them last night. I mean, it's kind of great. That thing
great.
of, it's just, but the whole vibe of the place then is it's in, everyone is in service of this night, of this thing. A theatrical performance.
But it's the only art form that is consumed all over the world, loved by everyone, cherished by people, but does not have a direct professional path in order to be successful. It's not like music. You can learn how to play a guitar. You can take online classes. You could figure out how to compose music. You can get together with bands and practice and put it together. There's a path. With stand-up comedy, it's just go up and figure it out.
Yeah.
Go up and figure it out. And it's very clunky, and it's a lot of wasted time. And I think a lot of that time can be sort of repurposed if we can give people more clear guidelines. There's no way anyone can tell you how to do your style, because your style is going to be different than Tony Hinchcliffe's style, which is going to be different than Dave Chappelle's style. Everybody's style and who they are and what they present, their view of the world.
Comedians leak is always my kind of theory on, like, you can't watch someone for an hour and not know who they are.
Yeah, for
Even
sure.
if, like, I mean, I'm joke to joke. I'm just joke to joke on stage. And yet people know when I'm telling the truth and when I'm bullshitting and when it's real and when it's not real. People get a real sense of you through your act, through watching you. Do you travel around the world much? Do you do much overseas? So
I haven't been lately, but I did the O2 Arena a few months back. Actually, a year ago. Did it in October last year. Yeah. I did that just for fun.
I mean, I'm like, I think I'm 40 countries in now, ongoing. And you go, what's happened the last 10 years? Like, the English language has become bigger. And the English language was big to begin with. But things like YouTube and Netflix has meant, because there used to be a thing in certain countries where they would dub every movie and every TV show into the local language. And they would get it a little bit later, and it wouldn't matter. And the local actors would do the voice, and the show would be a hit. Great. That's all gone now. In the age of kind of global, interconnectivity, people know. Well, Game of Thrones was on last night, and the new specials by Joe is out this evening. So they watch it sort of straight away, and they watch everything in English. YouTube doesn't bother translating things.
Yes.
So everyone's English has kind of gone up a gear. So you can go to quite obscure places, and everyone wants to come out and see stand-up comedy, and they all know who you are.
Yeah.
And they're all listening. It's an amazing way to see the world.
It is. It is an amazing way to see the world, and it is interesting how comedy translates into these other places and how they absorb comedy. It's very different. Like I took Tony to Stockholm. We did Sweden. It was great. Yeah. But he was like, "Dude, I feel like I bombed." And I go, "You did really well. Why?" He goes, "Because they were quiet in between the jokes." I was like, "That's interesting."
Yeah, you go to some places though, and it's like, I remember
they would
playing
laugh
places in like
and stop laughing.
Finland, Denmark,
laugh,
Sweden.
Stop laughing.
And then at the end of the show, nuts.
Yeah.
Because it's more like a theatrical performance is the thing that they've seen before.
Yes. I'm like, they laughed at all your jokes. He's like, yeah, I know, but it just like felt like it was disjointed. I go, you're just used to these rowdy American crowds that like there's always noise going on.
Well, if you're used to playing the clubs as well.
Yes.
And, I play mainly theatres, so if I go into a club, I'm very distracted. Well, they're serving drinks.
Right.
During the set, what's going on? What's happening here? But of course, because you're not in that field, there's certain countries where you'll get a standing ovation, like Canada, America, Australia, love a standing ovation. They're getting up to leave anyway. They might as well. The UK, the risen Christ could come on stage and they'd go, yeah, I don't think. Well done. It's like, that's just not the thing.
Why
or maybe
is
it's
that?
me.
My friends from the UK that have come to America, one of the things that they've all sort of said is that in the UK, they kind of want you to not do well. And whereas in America, they sort of celebrate you succeeding.
I think culturally, if you think about what America is about, it really, I suppose it dares to dream. There's a bit of a tall poppy syndrome in the UK where if people do too well, it's like, well, let's cut him down to size.
Yes.
Whereas America is for dreamers, and they're going to do something, and it's exciting.
Yeah.
Austin's got a real feel at the moment for You know that every city whispers to you.
Yeah.
So Los Angeles says be more famous, and New York says make more money, and Austin seems to be saying be creative and weird. And
They're happy we're here too. That's what's really cool. It's like they've embraced it because a scene moved into a city where there's 15 world-class comedians that live here now that didn't live here 3 years ago.
Was Ron White the first?
Yes.
Yeah, Ron White's a guy that means nothing in the UK. Like, he's not famous in the UK. I can't see why. He's so good.
He's so
good.
And he's retired except for my club. So he's at the club all the time.
What, have you got Polaroids of him? What have you got on him?
He loves me.
That poor man's trying to retire, and you keep on dragging
He doesn't
him back.
really want to retire. He just wants to not travel anymore. And I said, Ron, you don't have to travel. You can get a new crowd every night of the week. Anytime you want, you can go up. And so he'll just text me, hey, you doing a show tonight? I'm like, fuck yeah, you coming? He's like, fuck yeah. And then he comes down and he's doing acid and he's an animal. He's so fun and he's so good. And it's like for him, it's taken all the negativity out of stand-up comedy, which is the travel and the weariness. He just leaves his house, drives 15 minutes. He's at the club, does a set, hangs out. We all party and laugh and have fun, and then he leaves. And so he's there 3-4 nights a week sometimes.
That's fantastic.
Oh, it's so much fun.
I like the travel, I've got to say. I like everything about. No, I think that thing when you have a job, when you're living your dream, you're doing what you want to do in life.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's on you to enjoy all of it. Mm-hmm. So the airport lounges and the delays and the early mornings or whatever, or the flights, the whole thing, you have to embrace it all.
Good for you. I'm glad you take that perspective. That's very healthy. Yeah, that's what everybody should take.
But it's that thing, isn't it, where that thing in life, disposition is more important than position.
Yes.
How you are in your head. We all know billionaires that are miserable.
Yes.
And people sweeping the streets very happy.
Yes.
And it's that thing of like disposition and it seems to be, I know it's trite, but it seems to be the thing is gratitude.
Yes.
Gratitude is the cure for resentment.
Yes.
And there's so much resentment around.
It's such a maligned word because it gets attached to woo-woo bullshit and people wear wooden beads and, it gets attached to posing. But I think I think
gratitude as
real.
well is like it. People imagine it's about the thing, not the environment is the thing we should be grateful for. That we live in this time. You know that Steven Pinker Enlightenment Now book, where you sort of go, well, now.
Yeah.
Now, I had a hot shower this morning. No one, before 1930, no one had one.
Right.
People didn't know what hot showers were. You washed once a week in cold water. Good luck, everyone. Everyone smelled disgusting. Like, the world that we live in now is so fucking great.
Yeah.
And
we just don't appreciate it because we're so accustomed to it.
Well, it's that, what do they call that? It's the hedonic treadmill. You get used to the good things really quickly.
Yes.
And so you're searching for more. But you look around, it's an extraordinary, well, the idea that like comedy is a thing at the moment. Imagine if we'd been born in the 1940s. Well, you not really.
We don't
comedy's
have that.
Not really.
Yeah.
I guess we could have gone on before the band and said something, but it wasn't quite like the people that who were the first people in America?
Lenny Bruce.
Lenny Bruce, but
he was really the first to do our style of comedy. Yeah, but it was our style of comedy where he's just talking about life. Everybody before that was like, two Jews walked into a bar, they buy it. Yeah. It was like set up punchline.
I mean, I do it's very old timey, really, in a sense, because I do jokes. So they stand and fall. It's very high wire. It's either it's binary. This is funny or not. There's no story behind it that you can. I mean, sometimes I do longer form, but really, it's quite like old school jokes. But yeah, Lenny Bruce, George Carlin, like people that started playing theaters and clubs and like to draw a crowd. So you weren't just.
And then Pryor was the first one to really do it well.
I never think Dick Gregory gets enough.
He doesn't. He doesn't get enough
People
props.
don't talk about it. People don't talk about what he did and part of the struggle. And he's incredible as a figure.
Well, he's also the one that exposed the Kennedy assassination.
No, I didn't know that.
Dick Gregory went on the Geraldo Rivera show 12 years after Kennedy was assassinated.
Who had conspiracy theories 35 minutes in? I
have it fucking every 20 minutes.
Wait a second.
Pops up like
so
magic.
hang on. So Because I know he was, had a big part in the civil rights movement.
Yes.
And was incredibly brave. He's
Yes.
kind of due a great documentary, like a proper
Yes.
Judd Apatow 3-hour Dick Gregory, Here's Everything You Need to Know documentary.
Yeah.
I would love that.
Yeah, I would love a documentary on him as well. We've sang his praises many
Showtime
times.
put one out.
Oh, they
2
did?
years ago.
Okay.
Oh, the one and only Dick Gregory, 2021.
Wait a second. Showtime have a time machine and they used it. They used it to steal this idea.
I think so.
Motherfuckers.
I mean, he was fantastic during the Vietnam War. He was fantastic during the Civil
So
Rights movement.
get back to the Kennedy thing.
So he went on the Geraldo Rivera show in 1975, and so this is 12.
How old is Geraldo?
He's old as fuck.
Yeah.
So, but he looked good back then. He looks pretty fucking good now. Dick Gregory went on, and he went on with the Zapruder film, and it was the first time the Zapruder film was ever exposed to the public. So Geraldo Rivera played the Zapruder film, and you see Kennedy grabbing his neck where he got shot from the front.
And Dick Gregory brought it on.
Yes, Dick Gregory brought the film to Geraldo and played it.
And our next guest is a comedian for a bit of light relief.
Yeah.
He's going to show
Wanna
you.
play it? Here, we'll
the
play it here.
Zagruba.
Zapruder film.
How many concert gigs did you do? How many
I don't know
appearances
exactly
of
when in the
comedy?
video he talks about it because it's a 20-minute video.
Okay.
Well, screw ahead. There.
So he shows the video of Kennedy being shot, and then he goes, and I'm going to be at the Laugh Factory in Miami Beach on Thursday. Come see me.
Fortunate net effect of that is to make more people watch it. Well, I'm telling you right straight out that if you are at all sensitive, if you're at all queasy, then don't watch this film. Just put on the late night movie because this is very heavy. It's the film shot by the Dallas dress manufacturer Abraham Zapruder, and it's the execution of President Kennedy. And Bob and Dick, would you please narrate what we're seeing as we show this film?
This is commercial footage leading into Dealey Plaza. This is the car on Main Street.
So this film was taken by actual newsmen. This was spliced together with the Abraham Zapruder film.
Yes.
All right, so this is the beginning of the motorcade.
Okay, what you're seeing now is in slow motion so that you can grasp what is happening. This is a film taken by Marie Muchmore that leads into the Zapruder film. It's for time continuity. The president is waving to the crowd here.
And Jacqueline Kennedy, of course, is sitting alongside him in the open car.
Right. This is from Orville Nix's film. This is originally 8mm footage, and they're heading now toward Elm Street. They're on Houston Street now. They're going to make a left-hand turn. It's on the corner where they're going to make the turn there that the book depository was. Now, this is the Zapruder film.
Okay, so the cars are coming along now into Dealey Plaza.
Yes, these are the lead motorcycles of the motorcade.
All right, now with the president and Mrs. Kennedy is also Governor Connolly.
Right. Now, before he goes behind the sign, the president is waving to the crowd. When he comes out from behind the sign, he is shot. Then Governor Connolly is shot.
He's already been hit.
He's already been hit.
And now,
At the bottom of the screen, the headshot.
that's the shot that blew off his head. It's the most horrifying thing I've ever seen in the movie.
It is.
Now, the
I mean,
Warren
it's
Commission
genuinely
said that
shocking watching it
all-
now, isn't it?
Yes, it's genuinely shocking, but it was the first time people saw that his head moves back and to the left, indicating a shot from the front.
Yeah.
And that fell against the narrative that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone. There was a ton of eyewitnesses that said that they heard gunshots from the grassy knoll. And then there was also this ridiculous magic bullet that they had to attribute to Lee Harvey Oswald's gun because it had hit, one bullet had hit an underpass and ricocheted and hit a person. So they knew that one of the bullets that got shot missed Kennedy, hit the underpass, hit a curb, and ricocheted and hit this guy, and he got brought to the hospital. So
How on earth do we not have an answer to this now?
well,
It seems
they keep hiding the data. They won't release it. In 2017, they were due to release it. They wouldn't release it then. It was again, I believe in 2021 they were supposed to release it.
it's a very odd. I mean, conspiracy theories are like they're sort of fascinating because they're simple solutions to complex problems. So a lot of them, I kind of go, well, I'm not sure whether there's any validity in that. It just seems like an easy solution to this thing, which is incredibly nuanced and complex. But the Kennedy thing, you go, well, it's the president got shot.
Right,
How
but-
was that? How could they have covered this up?
1963. There was, I mean, there was no independent journalism. There was no YouTube. There was no online commentators that weren't captured by a system. They weren't a part of an enormous structure like the New York Times or the Washington Post or whatever the fuck it was.
Yeah.
And the Zapruder film, again, had been archived for 13 years before it was, or 12 years. 12 or 13?
I didn't realize that. I kind of naturally,
Yeah.
I assumed, stupidly, that he got shot and the film came out the next week.
No, it
12
didn't.
years. I mean,
Yeah,
that's-
that, I believe, was it 75 that it came out?
I remember reading into
Shocking.
this it was like the right frame, like frame 313 or something like that hadn't been seen. They did have it as a Zapruder film, and they posted a lot of it in screenshots and like Life.
In Life magazine, because
Yeah,
Life
okay.
magazine owned it.
But they left
And
some of it out.
And then somehow or another, Dick Gregory acquired it, and that was around 75. And that's when he aired it on television. And when
kind of
he aired it on
extraordinary, isn't
television, it just opened up everyone's eyes. They're like, well, anyone who'd ever seen anything get shot knows that when you get hit with something from the back, you don't go back towards the shot. The impact throws the head back.
Yeah.
You see the spray of the bullets, and it appears he's getting hit multiple times from multiple angles.
What's your feeling on it then? I mean, you've looked into it. You're a big conspiracy guy, but who do you think orchestrated JFK's?
That's a good question. I mean, Tucker Carlson came out on television and said that CIA killed Kennedy, and I think that's probably one of the reasons why he got removed from Fox. I don't know who did it. I really would be. I would be.
I'm amazed it hasn't
talking
been
out of
like
my ass.
a deathbed confession or something. Because I mean, conspiracies more broadly, you kind of go, well, it involves sort of cognitive dissonance.
Wasn't there a deathbed confession from E. Howard Hunt?
I was gonna say there was something, but
Yeah, I think it was E. Howard Hunt,
Okay.
who was one of the people that was supposedly on the grassy knoll. There was Woody Harrelson's father was supposed to be involved in this too. He was apparently a hitman. There was, according to the lore, the last confessions of E. Howard Hunt. Yeah, the ultimate keeper of secrets regarding who killed JFK, and I think
Yeah, that's how you keep a secret. A pipe.
I think on his deathbed he said that he was involved in the conspiracy to kill the president. I don't know who was involved. I mean, I think it was probably a bunch of people. There was a lot of people that wanted Kennedy out of there. I mean, he wanted some pretty radical changes. He wanted to disband the intelligence agencies. He thought that secrecy was abhorrent, and he, talked about it openly in this one speech that he gave about secret societies. And he,
Well, it's odd, that thing for me. I mean, I'm kind of thinking about maybe doing a bit about this, about saying, look, because it involves two thoughts. You've got to believe the government there's a deep state that is sort of geniuses and can cover these things up and can, fake a moon landing. And also the government are idiots. They can't organize anything. And
Well, it's different.
What I want to do,
the
my
government, you
thought-
can't say the government, right? Because
'Cause
the
it's
government
huge.
is a blanket. That's like saying drugs. Drugs
Yeah.
are bad. Well, I'm drinking coffee. It's not bad. Everybody drinks coffee.
But that thing of like going,
a drug.
what we need is some of those guys from the deep state over here for a week to deal with the regular shit. We need someone on transit duties. We need someone from the deep state to look at hospitals.
Well, in a lot of ways, those are more complex issues than assassinating someone and covering it up. Because back then, again, it's not like information today where people have, like, everyone has a cell phone. Like, if the Kennedy assassination happened today, there would be footage from 100 different angles.
Yes.
There'd be so many people there, and we'd
amazing
have
how
high
much there
resolution
is, really.
footage. It is amazing, but it was just because he was so important. And back then, there were a few people that were enthusiasts that had their own personal
and the thing
video
with
cameras.
the thing I guess with conspiracy is some of it's true. Like the biggest conspiracy I think probably of our lifetime was paedophilia in the Catholic Church.
Yeah,
I remember that being talked about when I was a kid.
Well,
and
how about
thinking
in the
my
UK?
mother was crazy,
Jimmy Savile.
just
How
hiding in plain sight.
crazy is that? And
It's
that
really
guy looks like a pedophile.
Yeah.
I mean, he looked like such a
here's-
fucking creep.
Here's the story I heard on Jimmy Savile, which is interesting. He had a big show on TV called Jim'll Fix It.
Yeah.
Which was him making dreams come true for kids or whatever. They'd write in with a wish.
Yeah.
And he'd make them come true. But he had that nickname before. So he was kind of a fixer. He invented the turntable, the two record players together, that turntable.
Oh, like for a DJ? Like
for a
mixing?
DJ, he invented the dual
Really?
turntable. Yeah.
So
I
it's
mean,
not all bad.
Pretty much all bad. 99.9%
99.9%
bad, real bad. Yeah. What was
Well,
my
one
joke
good
about him? He
invention.
was it's a very British joke, but Jimmy Savile, the only man in human history to have fucked more miners than Thatcher.
Oh.
That requires quite a lot of information
About mining.
Yeah. Margaret Thatcher, what she
Yeah.
did to the miners, and also, it's a long way to go.
It's a good joke, though.
Yeah, but he was hiding in plain sight and was part of the establishment.
Yeah.
But I think that thing of like going, the story I was told was he was kind of connected very high up because of what he did in terms of fixing things. Like, so the guy that, are you familiar with the Profumo affair?
No.
So it was the idea that the minister for I think the Ministry of Defence was having he was having an affair with a lady who was also Christine Keeler, who was also having an affair with a Russian agent.
Oh.
And she had been procured by this other guy who then got assassinated, or they think got assassinated. And so I think the story I heard was Jimmy Savile had a similar role for procuring certain things for certain people.
Interesting.
So I wonder what he was doing for the police or for the Secret Service that gave him
Right.
that ability to
That
just
immunity.
total immunity.
Well, that's what's the really scary idea, is that there's a ring of people that are pedophiles. That's what terrifies people, that there's a ring of powerful people that's the, if you want to go full QAnon tinfoil hat, that's
But I think
what a
that
lot of
is
people
like,
believe.
I presume Jimmy Savile was acting alone. I mean, I presume that's.
But why?
But why?
Why do you presume
Why
he was
cover it up?
acting alone? I don't know. I mean, what if other people were also involved? What if other people were also doing the same thing?
Oh, it's a terrifying thought.
I mean,
isn't it?
there's a similar case in America with Sandusky, who
Is that the
Jerry
guy
Sandusky. He was the coach that did a lot of things with kids and worked with kids, and everybody had this image that he was this great guy.
Yeah.
When it turns out the entire time he had been molesting kids.
It's pretty horrific, isn't it?
Yeah, it's horrific, but that's often the role they play. The role they play as
Well, they have to get themselves
predator,
into a mission
yes.
where they're close to.
yes, which is like Boy Scout masters and priests.
Which
you
is,
know?
it's a terrible thing because something like the Scouts, which is very good for kids,
Mm-hmm.
go and play together and learn those things and those skills. It's a great organization, and yet that's absolutely fucking ruined it. That's the first thing you think of now
Yes.
when you think of the Scouts.
Well, the Catholic Church is the greatest example of that, right? I mean, you cannot say Catholic priest without someone thinking pedophile. There's no
Yeah.
other occupation on earth that has such a connection to pedophilia.
Yeah. It's a weird. Someone was talking to me about the history of the Catholic Church and what happened, and the idea of the thing that turned the Catholic Church bad was the plague.
Really?
So the plague hit in the Middle Ages, and before then, the priest was the smartest guy you'd ever met. The smartest guy in the town became
could read
this guy
Latin.
could read. This guy
Yeah,
can read.
right.
There's just shapes on a page to us.
Mm-hmm.
But like had access to books, was reading, was the most erudite, brilliant guy. The bishop was even smarter than that. The Pope was a genius. Great. So the plague happens, and the plague wipes out, I think it's a third of the European population, but it might have been more than that. And it wiped out a third of regular people, but it wiped out 90% of priests because priests had to give last rites. Oh. So they were around the plague more than regular people. I need the last rites. I'm dying. Okay, then he dies.
Right.
So the barrier to entry for getting into the priesthood went from you got to be great to you seem to have all your own teeth and you can string a sentence together. You'll be great. So all of that stuff that comes after, downstream of that, like the plenary indulgences, this thing where you could buy your way into heaven in the Middle Ages. You could sort of pay someone to go, you can make sure I'm okay when I get there, though. That kind of nonsense came along afterwards when it had all kind of come
Corruption.
down.
Yeah.
The corruption and the
Interesting.
yeah.
I had heard that it was connected to celibacy, and that initially there was no celibacy clause. They weren't.
No,
they weren't
that
supposed to
came
be
in the Middle
celibate.
Ages. So it was that thing of they wanted to be more like Christ. So they who was celibate, and so they went, well, I'm going to be, one priest said, well, I'm going to be more like him, live like Christ. I'm going to be celibate, not have a wife. And then that kind of took off as an idea.
That's interesting because what I had
'Cause it
heard
didn't
was
happen
that
in the Anglican
they
Church.
were banging all the women because the priests were rock stars. I mean, if you have a community where the priest is literally connected to God and he's a biological male and he's horny and these women worshipped them and,
and
came
also,
to them for.
It's the original show business.
Yes,
I mean, if we were
yes.
if we were who we are in the 13th century, 100% priests.
Or
Sorry,
jesters.
I can get up in front of these people and talk to them for an hour a week.
Right.
Done.
Right.
Yes, put me down for one of those.
Right. And they'd seek guidance from you. You'd get all these accolades. And apparently they were allowed to have sex with women, and they were fucking everybody.
Yeah.
Just like rock stars, because they were probably the most popular people in the town.
The other thing that that's very interesting. The other thing that ties it to, like, there's often been, and it's a very unpleasant thing, but there's often been a conflation between homosexuality and pedophilia, which is it's just fucking nonsense.
Right, it's nonsense.
It's nonsense, but it keeps on kind of rearing its head in a weird way. But there is something with the Catholic Church where it's hard to remember how vilified gay guys were a generation ago, let alone 2 generations ago.
Yeah, well, very recently, in the 90s.
It's crazy, but it's true. So there's a weird thing where, okay, so let's say you're a gay guy in, I don't know, 1890. You knew you were gay when you were 14 or whatever. Like everyone else is getting married and going off, and you go, I'm a gay guy. The priesthood was a smart move because you went, well, I don't have to get married. And I know I'm not about that, so I'll join the priesthood. So you join the priesthood. You were a gay guy. There were other gay guys that had the idea. Great.
Right.
Now, here's the weird thing. Pedophilia was the same level sin in the eyes of the church at that level. So one covered for the other. It was you were all damned and going to hell. It was all terrible, which is obviously some fucking nonsense. But yeah.
Well, there's a different attitude towards same-sex minors and adults that is with some people in the gay community. In fact, there was a law that they were trying to pass in California where they were saying that the age of consent being 18 was in somehow or another anti-LGBTQ. Because some young men sought mentors in older gay men, some young men who are gay.
I mean, that sounds like
was his Klein, is that what his name? There's a politician in California that was very controversial because he was promoting this.
Very controversial because he's promoting pedophilia.
And
that's going to be controversial.
Well, I think his idea was like 16 and 17-year-old boys, and that should be okay. Which is, it gets very sketchy.
That
because
sounds also. Let's wind it back. Here's something that we could do, right? Here's something we could start a campaign for. Those laws about, the age of consent in the UK is 16.
Yeah.
But those laws should be for 17 and 18-year-old boys.
Yes.
They shouldn't apply to us.
Right, it shouldn't apply to a 55-year-old man.
So Romeo and Juliet law, I think they have it in New York. They have it in certain states where you go, yeah, that's the age of consent is 16 for her. And that guy who's 17 and it's her boyfriend and they've come up at school together, that makes sense. And then at 18, maybe... Okay, go and do whatever you're going to do.
I remember
that would
when
make a
I
lot
was
more sense to me.
18 years old, when I turned 18, my girlfriend was a year younger than me, and she was 17, and I was terrified that I was going to go to jail because I was a legal adult and she was still a child.
Right.
Even though we started dating when I was 16, or I was 17 and she was 16, and then when I turned 18, I was like, oh my God. Like, could I get in jail for this? I remember thinking that. Like, is this illegal? Like, because it kind of technically is. I think if you're dating a girl like that. I mean, this is 1985. So Gavin Newsom signed a law that could give judges a say on whether to list someone as a sex offender for having oral or anal sex with a minor. The bill would expand discretion currently granted judges in statutory rape charges as promoted by bringing fairness under the law to LGBTQ defendants. The current law, in place for decades, permits judges to decide whether a man should be placed on California's sex offender registry if he had voluntary intercourse with someone from 14 to 17 years old and was no more than 10 years older than the person.
Right. I don't want to come to your show and be all controversial, but I think broadly speaking, don't be a pedophile.
Right. I think that's a good thing to say. But that discretion, it says, only applied to a man who had vaginal intercourse. The new law permits judges to use the same discretion when the case involves voluntary oral or anal sex. The measure won't apply when a minor is under 14, when the gap is larger than 10 years or when either party says the sex wasn't consensual. The law does not change the age of consent in California, which is 18. Adults caught having sex with minors will still face statutory rape charges. Yeah, Scott Wiener, that's the guy. San Francisco Democrat. So this guy...
Great name for the guy.
Yeah. Isn't it funny how those Wiener guys keep getting in trouble? Anthony Wiener, Scott Wiener.
Yeah. Nominative determinism. It's a thing. Right?
It's like the simulation theory. It's like the universe is playing little jokes on you. It's like...
Yeah.
But this guy, like... There's photos of this guy at gay pride parades, like wearing a dog collar, like he's.
I mean, that's. I got zero problem with that. I got a problem with him saying.
There's just quote on it. I think the article continued. I didn't realize.
The law ends discrimination by treating LGBTQ young people the exact same way that straight young people have been treated since 1944. Wiener said in a statement, adding, "Today, California took yet another step towards equitable society." So what that seems to me is like there was a law already in place giving judges discretion, but it was only for vaginal sex, and he thought that it should apply to oral and anal sex.
Yeah.
It seems like the law is the issue, right? Because 10 years older, like if someone's 26, another person's 16, like, or 15 and 25, like, that's crazy. I mean, there's a reason why it's 18. Like 18 is like reasonable.
Yeah, and I think you have to give people agency at some point. Yeah, at some point you have to give people agency and go, look, you're allowed to make your own decisions now. Do as you please.
Yes. I mean, you are certainly a young person at 18, but if you're a young man at 18 and you decide to have sex with a man who's 30 years old, like that's completely reasonable.
I think it's also, try telling an 18-year-old they're not full grown. I mean, it's a weird thing. I wonder in the future, because the mind, your brain isn't fully developed. I think it's 25.
Well, 25 is the age your frontal cortex is fully formed, I believe, as a male.
Do you think?
I think for females like mentally mature earlier than men too.
I wonder what age it is, but
they're generally smarter than men.
I wonder in a generation's time, will everyone go, "Sorry, you were fucking a 21-year-old"? I wonder will it ever go the other way?
That seems silly. That seems, especially men and women. I mean, if it's a 21-year-old man, a 30-year-old woman has sex with you, she's going to be brought up on charges. That's insane.
Yeah. You had that great bit about that.
Yeah. I said there's no sexual equality when it comes to child molesting.
Yeah.
I said because a grown man can molest a 16-year-old girl, but a grown woman can't really molest a 16-year-old boy. She can only let him fuck her. Like, what's the worst thing that happened? You found out about something awesome early? Like, poor Billy got his dick sucked by the hot teacher.
Yeah,
he's never going to recover.
It's a very good.
Thank you.
And we're not denigrating the suffering of men that have been molested.
No. But it's always
Dimitri Martin had a great line on that as well. He said about some guy that fucked his teacher, and Dimitri said, he died. He got high-fived to death.
I think that was Zach Galifianakis.
Was that Zach?
I think so.
I think it's Dimitri.
You might be right.
I'll double down. I mean, those guys are both phenomenal writers.
I think it might have been Galifianakis. But either way. Great joke, but it's high five to death. But it's it's a difference. There's a difference, and it's also the difference in how we. It's unfortunate, but there's a prejudice about women having sex versus men having sex. That with a woman is being taken advantage of by the man, like that they don't have agency, whereas the man is the pursuer and the predator. And so there's an aspect of that goes along with it, that a male, like we don't think of a 16-year-old boy having sex with a hot 30-year-old woman as like that boy being molested. We just don't.
Yeah, well, I suppose, increasingly, we will. I haven't given it a lot of thought, but it does strike me that thing of like agency and being 18 and being a grown-up in society.
Yeah.
I suppose the problem is that thing, what's that book, is it Jonathan Haidt? The coddling of the American mind. That idea of going, if there's no freedom for kids anymore, like you're not allowed to go and play on your own. You're not allowed to leave the house and mess around. And, the only freedom you have now as a kid is online. So you're not allowed to go and experience that thing of being out in the world.
In danger. Yeah. And knowing what's safe and what's not safe and having experiences with people that are sketchy.
So then if you don't get any of that, until you're 18, and then suddenly you get all of that, but you've not been drip fed it.
Right.
Like that thing of like, I know what your childhood was like. We were pretty, grew up in Slough, quite a sort of working class, to the west of London, and we were a nice little bit, and we would go out on bikes in the morning, and you would come back for your dinner in the evening. You would just be out for the day. I don't
Same.
think.
Yeah, my childhood was
I
very
don't know
similar.
if that exists.
No, that's like
America
almost
anymore.
like child abuse. It's almost like, neglecting your parental duties. Just let your kid just roam out of the house and come back at dinner.
14-year-olds used to be babysitters. Now 14-year-olds need babysitters.
Yes,
And I
that's a
don't
good
think
point.
anything's changed about humanity. So I think the idea that you have agency at 18, but like it goes from 0 to 60
Yes.
in one day.
Right. That's a good point.
And like the drinking age is 21 here, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
18 at home. But you go, well, actually, it kind of, everyone assumes in the UK you're going to drink a little bit when you're 14
Yeah.
in the park with your friends.
And it's
There's
also
a little bit of that.
the different levels of experience of people that are 16 and 17 years old. Like when I was in high school, the first girlfriend that I had, she had a single mom, and she was essentially on her own and left to roam around from the time she was very young. And she had been going to concerts when she was 12 and 13 years old, and she'd already had sex before I had. Like, she was a year younger than me, and when we met, I was a virgin and she wasn't. And so it was, she was more worldly and mature than I was. Like, she knew how to go to concerts. She knew how to get backstage and meet people.
The idea that we're saying, an age like 18, every 18-year-old, oh, that's just a
Yeah.
solid state. Everyone's the same. Everyone's different.
Very
everyone
different.
comes to it from a very different perspective.
Sure.
People mature at different speeds. It's very, there'll be young people listening to this as well. It's that thing where it seems like such a race when you're young.
Yes.
To get there, to do everything.
To be grown up.
And you feel like you need to make all the decisions.
Yeah.
When you're 19, about, oh, okay, which college degree? What am I going to do in life?
Yes.
What am I going to? It's a panic.
Well, that's what's so predatory about America, because that's when student loans come in, and you get shackled up with these student loans that you can never get out of debt with. Student loans in America, I don't know how you have it in the UK. You have free health or free education, right?
No, we used to have free education. So when I went to college, it was free. You had to pay for your kind of bed and board, and it was free. I went to university. I got a free education. It feels ridiculous that we let that go. And
does
maybe
feel ridiculous.
maybe it's like, okay, so if it's too expensive, then I can see an argument to say, well, on academic merit, we cut the number of places until we can afford for it to be free.
Yeah.
But it's free for everyone.
Well, it certainly benefits the greater good of society to have more people educated. And
Yeah.
what greater thing to spend tax dollars on than to educate the population? It's fantastic. How could you make an argument against it? And with the predatory loans in America, the way it works is, like, say if you start a business and you take out a big loan to start a business and your business fails and you're, hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, you can go bankrupt.
Yeah.
And then you're absolved of that debt. If you get a student loan, you are never absolved of that debt. You must pay that debt, and the interest keeps increasing over time.
You know what I'm hearing here.
What?
We need to get into the student debt business. This feels like this.
It sounds like you can't
You think you're making money in comedy on podcasts? Please, the
Well,
real money is in student debt.
And it's pushed on people because everybody feels like they have to go to college or they're going to be a loser. And there's people right now in America that are getting Social Security money, and their Social Security money is getting docked because they owe student loans. So you're at the end of your life.
Someone made a point recently about a college degree now is a luxury good. It's like a Louis Vuitton handbag. So you get the luxury good, but what can you do with it? What's the benefit? Because
Well, it really depends on the degree, right?
Yeah,
Some things
if
like
you're a
medical
doctor,
degree. Yeah,
of
you
course,
need a degree.
engineer, something
Right.
like that.
Yeah.
But if it's just an arts degree,
Gender studies.
then
Yeah.
you go, well, what are you going to do with that degree? Like, the map is not the territory.
Yeah.
Who would you rather employ? Someone with an MBA or someone who's got 2 failed startups? Failed startups, please. Someone that's been in the trenches and tried it and done it. So I think that thing of, I don't know what advice you would give an 18-year-old today, but
It would
maybe-
really depend upon what they want to do and I'm the worst person to give that advice because I knew because of my childhood and the way I grew up, very unstable, divorced parents, stepdad, moved to a new place all the time. I was terrified of rigidity. I was terrified of a job. I really felt like a loser because I felt like all these people can keep jobs. Why do I hate them so much?
And because it's interesting. What I see in you, and I don't know you that well personally, but I see your work, and the thing flowing through it is discipline. Discipline and freedom seem to be the two things. And you go,
Yeah.
and obviously those things have been separated in our minds. But
Yes.
discipline and freedom are not the same. They're exactly the same. Discipline gives you freedom.
Yeah, that's Jocko Willink. That's
but
what
you-
he says.
but
Discipline
it's
equals freedom.
Exactly
Yeah.
right. So
Yeah.
that idea of going, well, it's martial arts,
Yeah.
which is all discipline. It's stand-up, which I know is all discipline. Everyone's got
Yeah.
ideas. Everyone talks a good game. It's in the execution.
Yes.
It's in doing it. So that thing of like going, couldn't hold down a job. But I mean, you're pretty good at showing up to stuff.
Well, I realized later that it was just I wasn't interested in those things. And what I was terrified of is being forced to do something that I wasn't interested forever. And I
Yes.
saw so many people that they would just wait until they got home every night and just get drunk and then do it all over again in the morning. And then their bodies were deteriorating and they all wound up getting cancer and getting sick and they all died young. And it was sad and depressing and
Well,
gloomy.
it's work to live as opposed to live
Yes.
to work.
Yes.
So your thing is, it's work is the fun stuff. It's all the stuff that you're passionate about. You
Right.
try and make that your career. That's very good advice for anyone that's young listening to this. Like, what are you interested in? What do you pay attention to? Do that. Do that. Because that 10,000 hours thing, it slightly loses what could you stand to do for 10,000 hours?
Right.
10,000 hours is the minimum. I don't think there's any mastery in 10,000 hours.
Right.
But I think
you
there's...
become a professional at 10,000 hours.
Yeah.
Well, with me, when I got into martial arts, then I realized like, oh, I'm not lazy. I'm just not interested in those other things. And then when I got into martial arts, I was extremely disciplined, like fanatically. Like I trained every day. I literally lived at the gym.
But
I taught.
You're preaching to the choir. You can't beat your environment.
No.
And that thing of like finding your tribe, finding your thing. So
Yes.
a lot of people that are lost just haven't found their tribe, their thing.
Well,
it's hard if you haven't found it yet because you kind of go, well, it's easy for you to say you found it.
I was also not around people that were following their passions. Everyone that I was around was working. We lived in a blue-collar community, and it was surrounded by a white-collar community, and there's people that had all worked really hard, got a very good education, and got a respectable job, either as a doctor or a lawyer, an accountant or whatever, and they had a wonderful home, and they worked well. But I looked at them as like these deteriorating vessels of flesh that were barely getting by in the world, and I didn't want to do what they were doing. And I didn't know until I got into martial arts that there were people that were doing different things and that they were surviving and thriving, teaching something that they loved. And so that was my path. My path was competition and teaching.
It's interesting, the teaching thing, because I think of your stand-up career, you go, well, you've done what you've done in stand-up, and now you're building a club, and you've lowered a rope, and you're pulling people up.
Well, it was also I learned how to talk in front of people because I was painfully shy and socially awkward as a kid. Like I'd have like anxiety going to a bank teller, like that I was going to have to talk to the bank teller. I remember that. Like, what is wrong with me? I remember being like 16 years old, having to deposit a check and just being so nervous getting up to the teller.
Yeah.
And
I don't think that's you. I think that's
No.
being 16.
Yeah, I think
I think being a teenager is about being slightly uncomfortable in your own skin and
Yes.
deciding who you're going to be.
Yes.
I worry for the future generations coming up now because of Facebook. Because something like Facebook connects you to your past in a way that we don't have. So I reinvented myself a couple of times.
Yes, me too.
Like
Yeah.
I was 16 and I moved schools. And it seems like a trivial thing to move school from one grammar school to another grammar school, kind of who cares? But it just allowed me to kind of go, oh, I didn't really behave that well at that school. I kind of messed around.
Yes.
I was a ne'er-do-well. And then I got to the new one and went, I think I might go to Cambridge. I think I might be really academic. And
Right.
everyone went, okay.
Right.
Oh, okay, yeah, you
Right.
be that
no,
guy.
that's Jimmy. He's a fucking loser.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, I would go back towards my, when I would go back to my town that I grew up in later in life, if I'd visit, I would get nervous. And when I'd go near my high school, I'd feel terrible. I used to have nightmares that I'd have to go back to school. Like I didn't really graduate and I had to go back.
Isn't that a lovely feeling in stand-up? Like I was a couple of years in and I realized I'm never going to need my resume again. It's done. Like no one's ever going to care about my exam results again. No one will ever.
Yeah.
It's a very freeing thing to go.
Sure.
"Oh, that was great, but none of
Yeah.
that matters anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. And I wasn't interested in academic things at all. I read a lot, but everything I read was fiction. and I would only read because I was on the train getting to the Taekwondo school.
I must say, I used to read fiction voraciously, and when I started doing comedy, I stopped.
Interesting.
I didn't need the stories anymore.
Interesting.
Now I read nonfiction voraciously, but I like nonfiction, but I
Yeah.
don't feel like I need the stories because I'm doing something creative. I think it was
Yes.
that part of me that wanted that. It's like, I've got an outlet now. I found the outlet.
Yes.
Which is, God, you'd love that for everyone, wouldn't you?
I would love that for everyone. I would love it for everyone to be able to do something that excites them, whether it's making tables or knives or building houses, like
Yeah.
whatever the thing is that really gets you. And
Well, it's hard, though,
unfortunately,
because
a lot of
it's
people
the-
don't find that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it is hard to find. I mean, it's a life's journey. There's two great adventures in life. One is finding what you want to do, and the second is doing it. And tragically, most people don't get to do either.
Right.
But you want that for everyone.
Well,
you want
especially
people
if
to
you
find
get
that thing.
captured early, and that's what I was talking about with the student loan thing. You get trapped in debt, and then you're on this path to a career, and then if along the way someone says, "Hey, have you ever thought about doing comedy?" and you're like, "Oh my God, I'm so tired when I get out of here. I just want to go have a meal and go to sleep," and you're thinking about like finding a woman, settle down, and having kids. And
I had a
like,
thing when I
everybody
used to
else is
work
doing
for a
that.
big oil company. Like,
Oh, really?
when I was in my mid-20s, I worked for Shell Oil. I was in marketing for Shell. And I very nearly bought a place. I very nearly bought a flat. And that thing of the things you own end up owning you.
Oh yeah.
I think I'd still be there. And it would have been a good life. I mean, not this life, but it would have been good. But that thing of the good is the enemy of the best. I think people now,
a good
I don't know,
quote.
18 to 21, going, you should be taking risks, big risks,
Yeah.
big swings.
But
Because
you should also be surrounded by people that are also doing the same so you can learn from each other. If you're a lone person on an island out there taking risks, it's very difficult to assess whether or not you're on the right path or whether or not it's viable.
yeah.
One of the beautiful things about stand-up and one of the things I love about the club is all these young risk takers are around people that are the same and that are maybe 10 years ahead of them. And we talk all the time. I ask them, like, you doing gigs? Like, you doing the road? Like, what's going on? How you doing? Like, are you
How
working
many
on new
gigs in
stuff?
is always the thing.
How often do you write?
I always think that thing of going to young comics, how many shows? It's like, because it's like airline pilots. We're like airline pilots. It's not really about how many years you've been doing comedy.
Right.
It's about, when you talk to an airline pilot, they tell you how many hours they got in the sky.
Yeah.
And I feel like hours on stage. How many shows you done?
Yes.
That's the thing. I'm like
Yeah.
250 on the year.
Yeah.
And I feel like, okay, I'm in a groove.
Yes.
Like, it's that thing of
Yeah.
like, you're match fit for this thing.
One of the things that we found in LA is that, like, when I was doing the Comedy Store and the Improv and the Ice House and going back and forth and I was doing Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then I'd go on the road Friday and Saturday, you get this groove where you just kind of know how to make something funny, and so it's easier to create new material as well. You
Yeah.
get this. You hit this vibration, and then if I had to take time off, that's one of the things that I found that was terrifying during COVID. Is I took like